Hello, hello, everyone. Welcome to the How to Make Podcasting Your Side Hustle Masterclass. I am your host, Nikayla Matthews-Okome, and come on in. Shout out to the replay viewers. We are about to get started. Let me stop sharing my screen for a bit just so I can fully see the chat and everyone who's here. Woohoo! We got a packed room already. People are filing in. I love it. Love it. All right, so what I'm going to do is share my screen tonight. We're going to jump right in. Shout out to you guys for being early, for being on time. And what I'm going to do now is go back to sharing my screen so that we can jump into the presentation tonight. All right, cool. So let me know. All right. First of all, my goal tonight, let's go over the goal. So my goal really, and the purpose of this training is to teach you my hacks, how to make podcasting your side hustle. So if you're in the right place if you want this to be more than just a hobby, but a true side hustle where you can use it as a platform to launch businesses. You can make money directly from it or indirectly. It's all up to you. So I'll be walking you through how to stand out as a podcaster in this saturated market, how to grow your downloads, and how to attract press and speaking engagements and opportunities. And of course, I'm also going to explain how you can work alongside me. So I do have a program called Podcast Moguls. Some of you guys are always asking, when's it open and all that. So I'll go through that as well. That will be more towards the end. So make sure you stay until the end, you guys, because not only do we have Q&A where I'll be answering every single one of your questions. Shout out to Joanna, who's in the chat tonight. She's saving all those questions for me. So if you don't see me answer a question, that's because I'm going to answer them all at the end at Q&A, and Joanna is compiling them for me. So in addition to Q&A, again, you'll learn how you can gain access to the Podcast Moguls Accelerator program. And I even have some bonuses for you, including I have a free Libsyn promo code for you. So you can start hosting your podcast for the rest of this month and all next month free. I've been hosting my podcast on Libsyn going on 6 years now, and it has been seamless. Like, I absolutely love this platform. It's the oldest host out there and the best. All right. So, let's do a roll call, because I see the numbers just keep going up and up and up for who's here. So first of all, let's get focused, you guys. Take a sip of water if you need to. I have my water bottle next to me. And let's do this roll call. All right, so let me know who's here. Are you a podcaster? Are you a side hustler? Are you ready for a change? Are you a corporate America survivor in transition? All of the above. I know some of my friends are here. Family is here. Let me see if I can see you while I'm sharing. All right, I see 5. All of the above. All right, I relate to that, completely relate to that. That's why I put that here, because at some point in time, I was all of these things. And I can relate, okay? So let me do a rewind, because some of you guys are here because you may have seen a Facebook ad or an Instagram ad and you've never met me before. Well, first of all, my name is Nikayla. That's how it's pronounced. And I was able to quit my full-time job because I was able to turn my podcasting side hustle into my full-time hustle, AKA my full-time job. And this post that you see on the screen right here is the post I posted on my Side Hustle Pro Facebook page when I quit. I did a whole episode on it. So I said, life update, I quit my job. And then I, shared where you could listen to the episode. The episode is still out there. Scroll back to December 2017. And I want everybody to have the option to do this if you so choose. But again, you can use podcasting to do whatever you want, okay? So it's all up to you. So a little bit more about me. In 2016, I launched my podcast, Side Hustle Pro. So since that time, as an independent podcaster, I've amassed 6 million plus downloads. We're growing, and multiple 6 figures in sponsorship. And while I was doing that and growing Side Hustle Pro, I was actually working full-time at NPR, National Public Radio, where I led the digital marketing for some of your favorite podcasts like How I Built This, Code Switch, and more. And overall, I have over 10 years of experience as a marketer. And most recently in 2022, last Friday, as a matter of fact, Side Hustle Pro was inducted into the Podcast Hall of Fame. Hey. So I know a thing or two about podcasting, but I want you to know that this is to show you guys what's possible. So of course, this masterclass is about how to turn your podcast into your side hustle. And I want to show you what I mean by that, because I literally did that. So more fun facts. I was born in Jamaica, grew up in the Boogie Down Bronx. I'm back in New York now with my husband Moyo and our baby Kingston. And together we are still certified side hustlers. Those of you who follow Side Hustle Pro know we have a coloring book app called Color Noir. We are juggling so many things, parenthood, careers, and we're here to share our journey along the way. So podcasting is the main reason I have the freedom and the options and the flexibility that I do. So when I was working full time, I had very few vacation days. I had very limited control over how I spent my free time. But podcasting allowed me to quit my job 1.5 years after launching and then go on this honeymoon of my dreams where you see me posing here. This is in Zanzibar. So when Moya and I got married, I didn't have enough vacation days for us to take a honeymoon. And I've always wanted to go step foot on the continent of Africa. So we did delayed gratification, went a year later once I had quit. So, delay is not denial. And podcasting also gave me the flexibility to do motherhood the way that I preferred, which was to have the flexibility to stay home with my son for as long as I felt I needed to. Now, the panorama gave me a little bit more time at home with him than I expected to, but I'm still very grateful. He's going to be 2 soon, and he has been home with me, and I've been working, juggling motherhood and working, and I've had that flexibility due to podcasting. So when I worked full time, again, I had little to no family leave. I worked at where I work, you kind of had to, if you needed extra days or weeks, you would have to ask your coworkers to donate time. Let me know if anybody feels that, anybody can relate to that. That was what my journey would have been. But podcasting allowed me to stay home with my son, going on almost 2 years now. So, and might I add, still earn an income from sponsorships from the programs and products that I created as a result of podcasting. So on the road to podcasting, though, it was very bumpy, you guys. I don't want you to think that, she's in the podcast Hall of Fame. Like it must have been so easy for her. She knows, she's a marketer. She knows what she's doing. A lot of things went wrong for me too. And the reason that I do this class and the reason that I'm so passionate about teaching is because I want you to sidestep my mistakes. I want you to already be aware of these landmines and just completely circumvent them. So this was me in May 2015. I look pretty happy, right? I'm cute. I have on my Mary Janes and my cap and gown. I'm sitting in front of the University of Michigan Ross School of Business, where I just graduated with my MBA. Now, I may look happy, but inside I was actually freaking out. All right. I was freaking out, you guys. I didn't know what I was going to do next. I had no plans. I had no plan B. At this point, I was rejected from my Google internship. That's where I'd interned between my first and second years of school. The plan was to get that job and then be set and not have to think about applying anywhere else. But that didn't happen as life would have it. And so I was graduating with no job, no money, and moving back to DC to live with my boyfriend, then boyfriend, with no income. So not exactly the life I planned for myself to have when I was taking this picture. But I didn't stay down in that what am I going to do next mode? So I went back to DC. I immediately started blogging again. I had asked around my friends and they'd helped me and poured into me and reminded me that, hey, you're good at blogging and writing and social media and all this stuff. Why don't you try that? So I said, all right, well, I'm looking for a job. I might as well start creating my own content, right? So at this point, I knew I wanted to build my personal brand. I knew that I was going to be a side hustler, but I wasn't really sure what that would look like for me because I still wanted a job. Okay, I still wanted some income. So I started following online branding coaches. As many of you are doing tonight, I started looking to people who were further ahead in their journey. So that inspired me to relaunch my blog. It was tacky, capital T tacky. I had content at that time, but no purpose. But the important thing was that I was getting started. type getting started in the chat if that's why you're here tonight. You're getting started. You're just moving forward, putting one foot in front of the other, trying to figure out life. Getting started. Yes, Nikki, getting started. Cassandra, yes. All right. That's what we're here for. You're in the right place. I'm so proud of all of you. So getting started. I learned that you have to be willing to take that first step, even when you don't know where it's going to lead. So I continued to blog. I made this header myself in Canva. I'm very proud of that header. Mind you, these are all the homies who let me interview them. And I realized through these interviews that there was a common thread. I was gravitating to the stories of Black women entrepreneurs, specifically side hustlers, right? People who were still working full time or had just recently left after building up their business. That was what I wanted to see in the world. And that's when the idea for Side Hustle Pro podcast was born. Let me tell you, I tried to ignore this idea. I tried to push this idea away because I was scared. I said, what if it's whack? What if it's not good? But ultimately, I realized that those other side hustle podcasts, they weren't talking about this. And I wanted to hear these stories of women like me who wanted to stay at their job and make sure they still had money, to do the shopping and things that they liked while they grew their business. So I had to do it. I had to do it myself. A year before launching Side Hustle Pro, I didn't even know what a podcast was. I had never listened to a podcast until 2015. And then in 2016, a year later, in the first 7 days after launching Side Hustle Pro, boom, I landed in the top charts. This is Side Hustle Pro on the left in the top 10 in marketing, and then on the right in the top 10 in business, the top 40 in business. So I was among people who I had admired and learned from, like Amy Porterfield, the Wall Street Journal. Craziness. And I went hard on promotion that summer. We're going to talk about promotion, you guys. I got these t-shirts printed up on Teespring. If you saw me summer 2016, I was wearing this t-shirt. If you met me at a conference, you know I was wearing this t-shirt. And I realized then what we're going to talk about tonight. I realized that if I took this seriously, I could quit my job. And I'm pointing to a sign here that says, knowing what you already know will keep you where you already are. If that ain't the truth, oh my goodness. So that is exactly why I said, you know what? I want to do this podcasting thing, but how do I make money? How do I make this a serious business? And I learned that I had to not only study podcast monetization, but then I also needed to invest in myself. Did you know that you need to spend money to make money? Like they don't really teach you that in business school, but yeah, you have to invest your money. So I invested in courses to learn more. My first major investment was investing $1,197 in a 2-day event sponsorship intensive. Emphasis on the word event because it was not a podcast sponsorship intensive. It was 2 days meeting live in DC to talk about how to get sponsorships for live events. But it was the only thing I could find on sponsorships. And I was like, I just need to learn how to approach brands. So from there, I started adapting what I was learning to the podcasting industry. And 6 months after launching my podcast, I pitched my very first sponsor cold, meaning I didn't know anyone at the company. I actually pitched the admin at, or the info at email address. And from that first email, I earned my first $4,000 podcast sponsorship contract. So that is where turning my podcast into a side hustle began. Side Hustle Pro, since then, it's been featured on Apple. It's been featured on the Today Show 3 years after I launched. It's been featured in Oprah, in Forbes. And I even hosted my first live show in person. People paid money, bought tickets to see this show live. Here I am on stage with Maya Elias. And this all happened as a result of taking it seriously and treating it like a true side hustle. So now let's get into my process even more. Now, I want you to know how I went from graduating with no job, no money, to appearing in major publications and on the Today Show. What did I do? So let me share my process with you guys. Take out your notes. get ready. I don't care if you screenshot. If you screenshot, tag me, tag at Side Hustle Pro on Instagram. I want to reshare. I want to know who's in the room. So definitely tag me at Side Hustle Pro. So let me share my process. I'll go through the three tips that I'm going to go over tonight, and then I'll break down each one. So hack number one, to stand out as a podcaster, you have to become known for one thing. Oh, some of you guys are going to fight me on this, but I promise you, you are going to thank me. Hack number two, you don't have to have a lot of followers to grow your show. You just need the right followers to gain your first 1,000 podcast downloads using Instagram. And then hack number three, you don't need a ton of podcast downloads to attract TV, speaking, sponsorship opportunities. You just need to know how to brand and pitch yourself. So now let's break that down a little bit. Hold on, I want to see what's going on in the chat. All right, okay, I see people saying this is where I am now. Oh, yes. Okay, and Joanna is saving your questions. So now let's get into hack number one. I'm excited, you guys. I don't know about you, but I really love teaching this. Okay, so most people think that you need to keep your podcast super broad so you don't put yourself in a box. And, you're like, I'm good at so many things. I know so many things. There's so many things within this that I need to touch on. Let me tell you what happens when you do that. Most people also think that it's cool to make your podcast title vague or a play on words. I'm not knocking you guys, because you'll see that I actually did that in the beginning as well. So we're all in this together. We all go through this process of thinking that's what we need to do at first. But here's what happens when you think that. Number one, you make it hard for people to find your show because they're not searching for that play on words. You make it hard for people to know what you're an expert in because you're touching on too many topics. And then you miss out on being called on as an authority on a specific topic. So here's what you should do instead to stand out in podcasting. Number one, you have to get clear on your interests. You have to get clear. And then number two, you have to pick a niche, AKA your one thing. And number three, make it easy for people to find you and know what that one thing is. So let me break that down a little bit more, right? So before, my blog was broad when I first started it. So remember, my podcast started as a blog and it was broad. It was called Kayla K Speaks. Nobody knew that was a play on my name. Again, play on words, right? A lot of us like to do this, name things after ourselves. No one knows what that stands for. So people weren't really tuning in. I was talking about marketing trends one week. I was interviewing someone in tech the next week. It was only once I got clear on my interests and I said, you know what, girl, you are interested in side hustling. You are particularly interested in Black women who are side hustling. And that is when it all clicked for me. When I transitioned and rebranded to Side Hustle Pro, that's when it became clear. Now, even if you don't instinctively know that I'm interviewing Black women side hustlers who scale from side hustle to full-time entrepreneurs, Side Hustle Pro already gives you that clue that, hey, I'm talking to people who are pro at side hustling. Hey, I want to know about side hustling. So that's that first layer of getting people to find me, right? You can do that same thing. So within Podcast Moguls, I help people go through that transformation. So a case in point would be my student, Erica McAfee. So when she came into the program, her podcast was Erica M. McAfee Podcast. Again, we all do this. We want to brand ourselves. So we think, oh, I need to make it my name because I want to brand myself. Well, in actuality, Erica has a podcast about grief and pregnancy loss, and she wants to connect with other women of color who have gone through this, who need support, who need to hear these stories and be inspired to carry on. So once she was able to connect those dots of sisters in loss, and rebranded her podcast, and not only rebranded it, but made it more eye-catching. You can even see some African print under this bold yellow color. She has a logo now. That is when her audience started finding her even more. And that's also when press and media who are looking to talk about this and looking for someone to weigh in about this topic are finding her coming up in their search. So how do you pick a niche? How do you become known for one thing? Let me give you some tips on that. So first of all, research some of your prospective topics. Research who's talking about that thing. Research what kind of conversations are being had, what kind of panels, what kind of topics on podcasts. Listen to some episodes and decide, do you want to talk about that long term, or is that just something you get bored of, you get tired of? And also identify what's missing in that conversation. So what are people not talking about when it comes to this topic? Oftentimes your winning podcast area and lane lies in that. So there were plenty of podcasts about side hustles when I started. You do not have to come up with some idea that has never been done before. That's not what I'm asking you to do. You don't have to reinvent the wheel, but within everything, there is something that people are not talking about. Motherhood is one of the biggest examples of that. Every day someone starts a new motherhood podcast, and that's okay because there are billions of women in the world, right? And everyone has a different experience. And so if you can connect with your audience and the person who needs to hear the type of stories you're telling about motherhood, that's how you find success. So you have to tell a story that no one else can tell. And no matter what your topic is, you do that by infusing your story, your perspective into your episodes. No one else could tell your story. No one else is Nikayla, no one else is you. So that in and of itself is how you stand out, how you tell a story no one else can tell. You cannot be afraid to share your perspective. And this is the number one way to build your personal brand. It's not naming your podcast after yourself. It's not putting your face on your podcast tile, your podcast logo. It is telling a story no one else can tell. So I want you to start with your secret sauce, okay? And if you have questions about that, drop it in the chat. We can talk some more about that. And guess what? Your secret sauce, it's often disguised as your failure or your shortcomings or even your quirks. So that story that, me sharing my background with you, I do that because that is something I used to be ashamed of. When I graduated, I did not tell many of my classmates that I did not have a job. I pretended as if I had one because I was ashamed, okay? So now that I was able to own my story, that's become my secret sauce. That's become part of my journey that helps other people to feel connected because I'm vulnerable about what I went through. Other people feel comfortable listening to my show, listening to me because they trust me because I'm no longer sugarcoating the truth. So, do not forget in all of this, finding out what it is, researching your prospective topic and all of that, make it easy for people to find you. So I want people, especially Black women side hustlers, Black women entrepreneurs, business owners, to connect with the Side Hustle Pro podcast. I want them to hear from these business owners and get resources, get tips, get encouragement. And so that means that I have to come up for those keywords. So I make sure the keyword is not only in my title, but it's in my episode descriptions. It's in the titles of the episodes themselves, because sometimes people want to name their episode something quirky or based on pop culture as well. Again, you could do that, but you're making it harder for your audience to find you. So don't just do what you see other people doing. Don't just do what you see other people who with larger audiences do. Sometimes they can do that now because people are going to listen no matter what, because they've built out that audience. You need to be doing SEO, search engine optimization, so that you can come up for the keywords that the people interested in your topic are searching for. So it starts with your podcast name, like I said. So Erica is coming up for Pregnancy Loss Podcast. It starts with your podcast description, and it starts with your episode titles. Are y'all following along? Are you getting this? All right, I see some questions coming in. Cool. I'm so tempted to answer them all now, but stick around for Q&A. I'm going to get into all of that. All right. So what do you want to be known for? Okay. If there's nothing else that you come away with from tonight, I want you to answer these questions for yourselves. What do you want to be known for? Does your podcast topic align with that? No, then change it. It's that serious. It is okay to change. It is okay to change your mind. It is okay to pivot. But what you don't want to do is be going forward, putting out content that doesn't align with what you want to be known for and called on to speak about. So let's recap, all right? Here's how to stand out as a podcaster. Number one, get clear on your interests. Pick a niche, AKA your one thing. No, you don't get to do 3 things at once. Pick your one thing and then make it easy for people to find you and know what that one thing is. And then how do you become known for one thing? You have to research that prospective topic. You have to identify what's missing. Then you tell a story no one else can tell by starting with your secret sauce. And one more time, because this can't be said enough, make it easy for people to find you. All right. So now let's get into hack number 2. Okay, I see those raised hands. Drop your questions in the comments. I'm so excited that you guys are listening and invested in all of this. This really makes me feel good. So hack number 2, you don't have to have a lot of followers to grow your show. You just need the right followers to gain your first 1,000 podcast downloads using Instagram. So what I'm about to show you, we're focusing on Instagram tonight, but you can actually apply this tip across any of the social media platforms with tweaks, of course, because every platform is slightly different. So pay attention because this can be adapted across platforms. So most people think that, you need a lot of followers on Instagram to promote anything. And most people even think that your Instagram feed needs to be perfectly coordinated, like Queen Bee here, with filtered photos and the perfect sequence. We all fall victim to that trap. But what happens is when we start thinking like that, we don't even try to create content. We get stuck in analysis paralysis. We're like, oh, I don't have time. I need to go put it in my template. Oh, the next photo needs to be pink. When you're doing all that, you're missing out on opportunities to share with your audience. Your audience just wants to hear from you. Raw, real, authentic. That's it. So if you are holding yourself back from creating content because you think it needs to be perfect and you're overthinking it, your audience is going to remain stagnant. And if your audience remains stagnant, then you are not getting your show in front of the right people. You need to focus on getting in front of the right followers. That is how you grow your downloads. So keep in mind that with any platform, only a portion of the people that use that social media platform are seeing your content, a very, very small percentage, even when they follow you, right? So the more people you can get in front of, the more people you'll get to follow you to say, hey, I want to opt in to seeing more of this. And then the more of that small percentage that sees you, the more people that is. So what do I mean by the right followers? Well, I mean the people who will be interested in your podcast. Now, those are the right followers. It's not anybody else. It is the person who is interested in your content and your content being your podcast. So those are the people that are going to click the link in your bio and grow your podcast downloads. So I know I mentioned that, this can be applied across social media platforms. The reason I love Instagram, and I'm starting with Instagram, as frustrating as the algorithm can be, it is one of the most seamless platforms for you to create and post content, connect directly with your listeners. Someone can listen to the episode and start a conversation with you that very same day, that same hour. And it's very easy for you to share your link. On TikTok, where sometimes people will share things, you have no idea how to get the link for what they just shared. Instagram makes that seamless, right? Even with the swipe up in your stories. So that is why this is a platform, no matter how you feel about it, that if you're a podcaster, you need to be utilizing. So I want to give you a quick case study of how you can do this. Meet one of my Podcast Moguls students, my Podcast Moguls alums, Ashley of the Stacks and the City podcast. So this is Ashley. And she used what I have coined the Side Hustle Pro OMG formula to gain her first 1,000 podcast downloads. So the OMG, each letter stands for a step. So let's go through this together, all right? You ready? Pay attention. You got your pencils, you got your pens, you got your screenshot ready? Okay. So the O in OMG stands for obsessively audit. That is step number 1. What do I mean by this? That means that whenever you are starting to share content, you need to have a person in mind. So for Ashley, let's just say, case in point, she is looking for Black people interested in finance, right? Specifically, her person is a Black woman in finance and a Black woman who's interested in finance, right? Your show does not have to be for Black women, okay? I'm just giving you an example. So once you know who it is that you're talking to, and I mean, I want you to get really, really specific. So I know that my perfect listener, her name is Janelle. She lives in Harlem. She works at American Express. She, she has a shea butter business on the side while she's working. I know so much about Janelle. And because I know everything there is to know about Janelle, I know where she hangs out on Instagram. I know what hashtag she's following. So I can go to that hashtag and do what I call obsessively auditing, meaning taking stock of what kind of content is doing really well for that audience right now. Is it quote graphics? Is it reels? Everyone thinks that, oh, you can't win on Instagram anymore unless it's reels. But when you go and research and do this OMG formula, you might find out something different. So step one, you have to obsessively audit your person and the content that they are engaging with the most. So you can go through, you can even, if you know who they are, you might say, hey, my person, her name is Portia, and she is interested. She loves the Budgetnista. So you're going to audit the Budgetnista, obsessively audit and say, hey, what kind of content performs well on this page? Oh, sometimes she does pop quizzes for her audience, or sometimes, she goes live. Like, you're going to take stock of all of that. And this is not to copy you. At this point, this is just research, because we're not copying here. What we're doing is using our time wisely. So if certain type of content does not do well, don't spend time creating that type of content. You know what I mean? Step two is making friends. That is the M in OMG. You're going to make friends, y'all, especially in these virtual times. Social media is our friend. Social media is our networking event. Social media is our Essence Fest. That is where we can connect with other people. Don't be afraid to follow someone who would be interested in your podcast. And how do you know they'll be interested in your podcast? Again, you have to start writing down that profile of that person. Okay, who would listen to this? What are they interested in? What are they doing right now? Who else are they listening to? Start to write down that person. And when you have that person fleshed out, I'm talking about their name, their age, who they follow, what they listen to, what they consume, what other podcasts they consume. Then you can find them on Instagram. And you're going to go out on Instagram and you're going to shake their hand. You're going to follow them. That's a handshake in the virtual world, in case you didn't know. And we're not doing follow for follow, you guys. We're literally meeting people who we want to connect to our show because they need this content. They want this content. They just don't know it's out there yet because the world and Instagram is too darn big. All right. So step number 3 is the G in OMG. That is to go over that data. If you, when you start using Instagram for OMG, turn your account into either a creator account or a business account. Either one will show you insights. And every single week, you're going to go through those insights, okay? You're going to look at which content performed the best, when were your followers the most active, where are your followers from, what are the top locations, what activity happened on your page. You're going to comb through all of that just once a week. Once a week won't kill you, okay? And it's pretty straightforward, so you don't have to spend hours on this, right? So go over the data and then use that to inform what you do the next week. So next week you can decide, hey, my quotes didn't really do that well. Maybe I want to focus on just, images with a caption, or maybe I do want to create 2 reels instead of 1 this week. So that is what the G in OMG is for, going over that data, using it to plan, because I want you to spend your time wisely. So Ashley did OMG. And here's what happened as a result. So Ashley went from having 758 to 1,260 Instagram followers in less than 8 weeks after she joined Podcast Moguls. Now, this may not seem like a lot to you, but let's go to the next slide. So Stacks in the City, the podcast, went from 300 to 1,400 monthly downloads in less than 8 weeks after she joined Podcast Moguls. So what does this tell us? Well, first of all, that's a 4x jump. How many of you guys would like that for your show? We're talking a 4x jump in downloads, okay, per month, and keep growing from there. So why is getting in front of the right followers so important? Because as your followers grow, so does your email list. When you create freebies for your followers to opt into, when you create opportunities for them to connect with you. So you're not just gaining followers, but you're going to provide your followers opportunities to come into your world. I know a lot of people are like, oh, why invest time in Instagram? We don't own it. This is a conduit to getting connected with your perfect listener, okay? So as your followers grow, so does your email list, so do your podcast downloads. And the goal here is brand awareness and exposure. When we post a post that is about our podcast, that is showing people that it exists. It might take them 7 touch points to finally, when they have the podcast app open, finally type in your podcast name. It might take them multiple touch points to finally click the link in your bio. So that's why the more you post, the more you get that content in front of people's face, and the more regularly you do that, the more you start to convert people to listeners, to subscribers, to email subscribers. So as your downloads grow, therefore, so do your opportunities to position yourself as an expert, to land press, to generate income from your show. And I put all of these because, again, it's up to you what you want to do with your podcast. Your podcast is the greatest audience builder and platform launchpad you can ever have. So if you want to make money directly from your show, you can do that. If you want to use your podcast to build an audience and then launch other products, you can do that as well. As a matter of fact, that's what Ashley did. So after she grew her listenership, Stacks in the City landed in the top business charts on Apple Podcasts. Here she is, number 179. That's the top 200 out of hundreds of thousands of business podcasts, you guys. I want to paint that picture for you. To be top 200 in front of hundreds of thousands of business podcasts is huge. So because of the Stacks in the City platform that she built and the audience she was able to grow, she has expanded her personal brand and income generating opportunities beyond podcasting. Here, case in point is just one example of one of the things she's launched, because not only is she passionate about finance and building legacy wealth, one of the vehicles that she does that through is real estate. So she's launched workshops and she's taking people through the process of her flipping houses in Baltimore. Definitely check out Ashley. So this is just one example of what you can do and what you learn inside of Podcast Moguls. So here's what else is possible with growing your tribe using OMG, aka the right followers, on Instagram. So this actually happened to me. This is a screenshot I keep, and I hold it near and dear to my heart. So the Nakira Show commented when I first started doing OMG myself on Side Hustle Pro. She wrote, "Listening in now. I don't know how you found me on IG, but thank God you did. My work days will be spent catching up on past podcasts." So you guys, this is what I mean by treating social media networking as real life networking and really introducing yourself to the people who'll be interested in your show. When you do that, people will thank you. People will thank you for exposing them to something they wanted to see. So the Nakira Show also commented on another post. She said, "Girl, I'm still on a high. I saved every episode to my phone and listened all weekend while riding in my car. It's so easy to complain when you have a 9-to-5 and want to pursue your passion full time. But I was telling one of my friends after listening to your podcast, I feel like, what am I complaining for? Your podcast was like a voice saying, keep going. Oh, and I made my friend subscribe as well. LOL, thank you again." Oh, this is another important point. So when you do on OMG, you connect with your person. Your person is your ambassador. Your perfect listener is your ambassador. They're the one sharing your show. There's no way my show could have made it to the Podcast Hall of Fame if someone, each time someone listened, they didn't say, "Hey, check out this episode. Oh, have you heard about this podcast?" That's what you want people to do. So, but you got to go out there and introduce yourself to people. So someone here said, "OMG, your friend request really just brightened my day." So again, these are real screenshots that I've kept from my DMs. I talk to people in my DMs all the time. Some of you might be here. You've talked to me in my Instagram DMs. So she said, I love your podcast. I actually binge listen to them and they're wonderful. Keep it up. So this is someone who was already following me. So that again shows me that I'm connecting with my exact person on Instagram. And I said, OMG, I love it. Glad to connect on IG. I've been reaching out to people who I think would be my target audience. So glad I found you. So I teach in more detail about how to identify who your person is and how to find them online inside of Podcast Moguls. But I wanted to, give you this taste of it right here, because there's a lot more that needs to be done. Like you need to actually take some time out to interview and to do some more research on your person. So that's more than we could cover tonight. But this is what the ultimate goal is, to find that person. So let's do a quick recap. I'm going to peek into the chat. Okay, Hawisha says, I love the info. I hope I said your name correctly. Thank you. I'm so glad. All right, Rhonda said good info. Great. All right, that's what I hope to provide. Okay, so let's recap. How do you gain the right followers on Instagram? Number 1, obsessively audit. Number 2, make new friends. And number 3, go over that data. All right, check-in time. Let me know if this is helpful for you. Give me a yes in the chat if it is. I can see that it is helpful. All right, I see the yeses coming in. Awesome, awesome, awesome. Remember to drop your questions. And if any questions are similar, Joanna is going to group them together. So, I'll be sure to get to everyone tonight. Okay, all right. So now let's get into hack number 3. So hack number 3 is you actually don't need a ton of podcast downloads to attract TV, speaking, sponsorship opportunities. You just need to know how to brand and how to pitch yourself. So, I've been in the podcast industry for, going on 6 years now. I have many friends. We all have different type of downloads. And because we know how to brand and pitch ourselves, we're all landing the same type of opportunities. Like everyone, there've been TV appearances, there've been magazine features and things like that. So it all comes down to leveraging your tribe and leveraging what you do and teaching that and branding and pitching yourself. So a lot of people think that you need these millions of downloads to be invited to speak at conferences or to be featured in publications. And here's what happens when you think that. So you miss out on opportunities to add value to every room that you are in. And then you miss out on opportunities to connect with people who need your point of view. We don't want you to do that, all right? So here's what you should be doing instead. First of all, if there's somewhere that you want to speak, whether that is a TV show, whether that is a conference, a festival, learn what that publication or that conference or that TV show, learn what they're looking for. And it's actually quite simple to learn this information. So we're going to go over that in a second, but you're also going to need to get your portfolio ready and know your story, okay? And then you're going to have to start pitching yourself. No one's just going to come out there and say, pluck, pluck, pluck. I mean, it does happen. And I'm not going to lie, that has happened to me, but it's because they saw me somewhere else where I pitched myself. And that is how the opportunity starts coming together. So you're going to have to start pitching yourself, and practice makes perfect. The earlier you can start, the better, because by the time the big guys come knocking, you're ready, you're comfortable, you're rehearsed, you're practiced. So here's what I mean by researching conferences. So research conferences where you would like to speak, okay? And then evaluate the theme or the topics for that year. You can do this with TV shows as well. Watch the TV shows where you want to be on, watch them religiously, pay attention to the segments, pay attention to the experts that they bring in, really write it down if you need to, so you can keep a record. Okay, what kind of themes do they do and during what time of the year? Like what kind of trends am I seeing here? Then determine what it is that you bring to the table. So develop a list of 3 potential topics, and your topics, of course, number 1 is going to be what your podcast is about, but then there are going to be some subtopics that you can speak to as well, right? And then make sure you always have an outline of the key takeaways that you would provide the audience. In anything that you do, in anything that you're trying to do to make your podcast a side hustle, remember that it's always about the customer. It's always about the audience. It's not about you. It's not about, oh, hey, I want to make X amount of money this month. No, it's about What do they need? What information can I share to help someone else and add value to their life? What product can I create to help someone else and add value to their life? That's where your sweet spot is. So outline those key takeaways that you would provide the audience. Then develop your portfolio and know your story. Now, a portfolio means something different to everybody else. All I'm talking about here is making sure that you clearly illustrate why you are the right person to speak to this topic, and you make that easy for people to see as soon as they come across you on your website. So you're going to develop a quick website. Now, what you see at sidehustlepro.co, that came about in 2019, 3 years into podcasting. If you want to know what my podcast website looked like before I got it finally professionally done, go to KaylaKSpeaks.com. So that is the template I used for 3 years, and it served me well. Why? Because you could immediately access my bio, you could access the episodes to get a taste for the show, and you could access my headshots. Those are the 3 portfolio ingredients that you want to make sure that you have on hand easily, because I can't tell you how many times reporters or TV hosts, TV producers are like looking for people, and they want people who make their job easy. They're like, oh, okay, boom, I can find her bio, I can find great headshots, boom, let's book this person. So you want to make it easy for people. That's one of the themes of today. Make it easy for people to find you, make it easy for people to hire you, make it easy for people to purchase from you. So once you have these things in place, then you can contact the organizers and pitch. All right. And the ingredients of a pitch, by the way, you want to do a 3-sentence intro, hello, name, title, and description of what you do. You want to do a 4-sentence overview of the session. Keep all of this as short as you can. Just provide the meat, provide the main ingredient, okay? And then do 5 bullet points with the key takeaways that you'll provide the audience, and then leave them with a 6 to 7 sentence bio. I don't care if you have a 2-page, 3-page resume. If you cannot sum up your bio in a paragraph, we got some work to do, because you have to think about this as if you were featured in a brochure and they're featuring all the panelists. Your bio needs to be very succinct. So with this formula, this is how I landed my first 4,000 in podcast sponsorship. And as a matter of fact, my pitch has gotten tighter, more succinct. It goes even harder these days than it did then. And I share those pitches inside of Podcast Moguls. So all of the pitches that I share with you, they have worked. They have landed me actual dollars, okay, via these cold pitches. And you can do it too, especially when you have the blueprint that I share with you guys. So by having my portfolio ready, in addition to cold pitching, by having my portfolio ready, when people have found me, because again, I'm coming up for the keywords of side hustle and Black women side hustle now. So when they find me and I land on the radar of producers at the Today Show or TEDx, when opportunity knocked, I was ready, because they can quickly see my bio. They can quickly see shots of me in action. They can quickly tune into an episode and, get the gist and say, all right, yes, she's talking about what I want to hear about. So stick around to the end, because I'm providing you an opportunity to get these exact pitches that landed me some podcast dollars and also an international conference. But this is what pitch success looks like. When opportunity knocks, you're ready. All right. So let's do a quick recap. We're going to jump into Q&A soon. I see all of your questions coming in via chat and Q&A. Thank you so much. Joanna's compiling them for me. So quick recap, how to pitch yourself for opportunities. So research conferences where you'd like to speak. Evaluate the theme and the topics for that year, determine what you bring to the table, develop a list of 3 potential topics, outline the key takeaways that you provide the audience, develop your bio, clearly illustrating why you are the right person to speak to this topic, then contact the organizers and pitch. It really is that simple. So let's do a quick rewind before we jump into Q&A, you guys. How to make podcasting your side hustle. Number 1, to stand out as a podcaster, you have to become known for one thing. Number two, you don't have to have a lot of followers to grow your show. I started my podcast account with 538 podcasters, 538 followers. I still have a screenshot of that somewhere. So I know you see Side Hustle Pro now and you're like, oh, of course, she has this many followers. No, it started as 538 people, okay? You just need the right followers to gain your first 1,000 podcast downloads using Instagram. And then number three, you don't even need a ton of podcast downloads to attract TV, speaking, sponsorship opportunities. You just need to know how to brand and pitch yourself. You need to be ready when opportunity knocks, all right? So before we jump into Q&A, let me know if you want to know a little bit more. So I know some of you, again, you've come here, you know, where's the podcast mogul, says Caitlin. Yes. So what if you could have my playbook? So Podcast Moguls is my playbook pretty much, where I guide you on how to launch, how to promote, how to grow your podcast into a true side hustle. We've touched on it tonight. I have 8 modules of content, and I clearly can't go through 8 modules tonight. So if you want to go from here and get a little bit deeper, I do have a full-fledged program, Podcast Moguls. Inside of Podcast Moguls, you get my ongoing guidance, like Ashley has, to grow her podcast downloads. You also, let me know if that would be helpful for you guys. I'm guessing yes, because I'm seeing the folks saying yes. So you all are invited. You all are invited to be a part of the next cohort of Podcast Moguls. The last cohort was in December. I'm just opening up a new cohort now. I do not do this every single, I only do this a few times a year. So I want you guys to have this opportunity to come on down and be taught by me. It is a labor of love, because I really, really, really take it seriously in teaching what I know, right? Inside of this program, I teach my proven effective marketing strategies to podcasters who want to increase their downloads, grow their podcast brand, monetize their podcast. And yes, it is for you as well. If you just have an idea and if you haven't launched yet, yes, you are in the right place, because I've taken many, many podcast moguls from idea to now being sponsored by major brands and companies. And I'll share some of their testimonies with you in a second. So essentially, Podcast Moguls, it teaches you how to launch a top podcast, gain subscribers from day one. It teaches you how to triple your current downloads. You saw, one of the techniques that I teach, but there are other techniques I teach as well. It teaches you how to grow your personal brand, and it teaches you how to make income from your show. So how I do this, I divide it into 3 parts. Part 1 is the course itself. So you can log in tonight if you join, and you'll see the 8-module podcast success curriculum. So this is on-demand, step-by-step video lessons, tutorials, templates, swipe files, and guides. So basically, these are the files that will teach you things like I share my sponsorship templates. I share everything in there. So you can join tonight and you'll see that. And then part 1, also, I go through these lessons with you. So you see me there. I'm teaching you here how to position your podcast. These are the modules. So module 1 is how to refine your podcast, how to refine your topic and find your perfect listener. Module 2 is how to position your podcast. Module 3 is how to launch your podcast. Module 4, market your podcast by growing your Instagram reach. Market your podcast by growing your email list. Market your podcast through Facebook and Instagram advertising 101. And module 7 and 8 are about monetizing. So module 7 is how to position your podcast for monetization. And module 8 is how to create that winning pitch for those sponsorships. Plus, I do go over the fundamentals. So how to actually set up your equipment, how to record, how to edit, where to host, how to set all of that up. I take away the tech intimidation for you and go over that with video tutorials. So don't even worry about that. So this is what Shirley of the She's Got Drive, one of my Podcast Moguls alums, has to say about the course itself. So Shirley already had a podcast when she joined, and she said, I only started implementing her marketing strategies about 3 months ago, and this is what I found. I had at that point 25,000 downloads, and in the last 3 months, I'm now at 46,000 downloads. Her strategies absolutely works. So if you, you're coming in and you want to double your, because that's almost double. So if you want to double, triple, quadruple your podcast downloads, like that's what I'm here for. I'm here to help you get to achieve those download milestones. So that's just some of the experiences that my students have. In addition to the course, I also have a community. So outside of the on-demand course itself, you are able to have contact with me in between our live coaching, which I'll get to in a second. So inside of our community, you can share what's going on with you. Like Felicia Wallace here talked about, she's doing OMG manually. People shared their wins, like when Felicia of the Trill MBA podcast landed at number 53 in iTunes careers. Of course, she came over to the community to share that. And Gianna of the Living Your Real Life podcast says that, we have this great virtual group where we can share ideas, we can be creative, we can give constructive criticism. A lot of people come in and share and ask for feedback. So that's the great thing about that as well. And she says, being surrounded by like-minded creatives is to me about as good as it gets. And she's like, if you're thinking about signing up for Podcast Moguls, I couldn't scream from the rooftops any louder that you absolutely should, because I get excited to dive in and learn more and more and better my podcast for my audience every single week. So that's just a taste of the live community and the people, your fellow Podcast Moguls that you get to communicate with, in addition to myself. Yes, I am active inside of the group. So part 3 is what a lot of you ask me about, the coaching. So yes, you have live coaching from me. We will meet monthly. We have video group coaching calls, just like we're here tonight, except we're all on video in our coaching calls. If you want to be, you can just be audio too. So it's your way to check in and say, hey, Nikayla, here's where I'm struggling, or this is what I would love your advice on. And that's what I'm here for. So you receive that personal guidance from me. We do deep dives on topics. In this particular session, for example, I had my editor, Chris, come on down and answer everyone's editing questions, because I'm not, the editing expert. So I bring in that person so that anything beyond the basics that I teach, if you have granular issues that are going on, you can, and this lesson is still available, by the way, on demand when you come inside of Podcast Moguls. So that's the great thing about the coaching. So you're getting a lot. You're getting monthly live coaching sessions from me with, in and of itself, you get 4 sessions when you join, and secretly you can keep coming for as long as you want to, but technically with your cohort membership, you get 4 live sessions, right? A one-on-one session with me is $1,000, but you're getting 4 live sessions included inside of your Podcast Moguls membership fee. Plus, you're getting lifetime community access. So I know people who charge this annual $2,364 fee every month for their, every year for their Facebook group, but you're inside of our private community for a lifetime, and you're not being charged an annual fee or anything like that. You'll have access to that. Plus, you have access to all of my sponsorship pitch letters and media kits. That in and of itself is an $1,197 value. You guys know that I invested that by itself just to learn the sponsorship game. And that was just event sponsorships, not even podcast sponsorships. So that's also included inside of Podcast Moguls. You also get my guest pitch templates, AKA the exact emails that I send to people that has them say yes and come on my podcast. People who I don't know, by the way. When I started with the homies, but 90% of people that I pitch these days, I do not know. So you'll get those as well. And then you'll also get Master the Gram. So Master the Gram is my intensive course just about building an engaged audience on Instagram. I'm actually getting ready to do a 2.0 version of that this year, and you'll have access to that as well when it launches. So you'll get monthly live coaching sessions. You're getting lifetime community access. You're getting all of my sponsorship pitch letters and my media kits. You're getting my guest pitch templates, plus Master the Gram, plus Goal Getter Action Plan. Now this right here, I use this process to this day. Like, this is the process that helps me to stay on track with all that I have going on in my life. I divide up my year into 12-week kind of sprint sessions, and I go after these goals really hard, 1 month at a time. And I'm realizing that, this process is extremely helpful. So I had to include that inside of Podcast Moguls, because I don't just want you to launch your podcast. I want you to keep going. I want you to keep doing it and keep thriving and keep growing it. So this is included so that you can start to structure your time better. So you're getting monthly live coaching sessions. You're getting lifetime community access. You're getting all of my sponsorship pitch letters and my media kits. You're getting the guest pitch templates. You're getting Master the Gram plus the Goal Getter Action Plan. And if you haven't whipped out your calculator yet, that is a total value of $8,553. Now, obviously, I am not about to charge you that. The regular price of this program, when you're not joining via a cohort, via one of these sessions, is $3,000. However, for coming tonight and, spending your time with me, the price is one payment of $997 or 2 monthly payments of $550. So you would pay one payment this evening and then in 30 days be charged again. So that is your investment to join Podcast Moguls. And the doors are now open for everyone who is interested for the next cohort of Podcast Moguls, the March cohort of Podcast Moguls. Head over to sidehustlepro.co/Podcast Moguls. Joanna, I don't know if you can pin that link, but we're going to drop the link in the chat. And fun fact, you guys, this is actually my first time doing the webinar, doing our masterclass on Zoom. So we're still learning behind the scenes with that as well. I usually used to use another platform. So yeah, the doors are now open, you guys. If you have any questions on that, do let us know. We'll add it to the list of questions I'm about to answer in Q&A. Now, I know that, for some people, you're like, oh, is this going to be worth it? Okay, Elle says that's a great price. I agree, Elle. So, but for those of you who are on the fence, how I make these decisions, I always think about, would it be worth it to me if X? That's the rubric kind of template I use in my mind. So, ask yourself, like, would it be worth it to me if Podcast Moguls help me X? So, for example, help you elevate your brand and land brand partnerships. Would getting approached with media opportunities be worth it to you? If the answer is yes to that, then I definitely recommend joining at sidehustlepro.co/Podcast Moguls. That is the link, okay? So here's what happened as a result of me elevating my personal brand with podcasting. I was on the Today Show, and this is one of those opportunities that came to me. I did not pitch this one. A producer found me online, again, when they were searching for side hustlers and side hustle experts and passion project experts. And that's all a result of the work that I did and the work that I teach you to do inside of Podcast Moguls. So that's just one way you can evaluate. And that's also what happened to Tolu of the UI Narrative podcast. So Tolu started inside of Podcast Moguls with just an idea. She did not have a podcast name. She did not have a podcast. She had just an idea. And now her podcast is sponsored by Google. So if it's worth it to you to not only start a podcast, but go in with the lens of knowing exactly what you need to do to build your brand in such a way that you can land partnerships and that you can use it as a platform to generate income in whichever way feels best for your brand, then definitely recommend coming on down to Podcast Moguls. So Tolu actually wrote this inside of her IG story during our last masterclass back in December, I believe it was. And she wrote, Nikayla from the Side Hustle Pro is the best mentor out there for podcasting. If you're serious about starting a podcast, you should sign up for a free training that's happening right now. And she shared my results from her training. I just hit 50,000 downloads, sponsorship deal with Google, featured in Mach Plus Best UX Designers Podcast of 2020. Boom, that right there. That right there is what I'm hoping to help you guys achieve as well. So that's also what Nia of the Dreams of Black Wall Street podcast shared. So when she launched her podcast, it was called Black Wall Street 1921 at the time. So she launched it, and within 2 weeks, she had passed 100,000 downloads. So this is an example, again, of niching down, of deciding what you want to be known for and going after that. So her person is someone who's interested in the Black Wall Street, in the Tulsa Black Wall Street massacre, the Tulsa race massacre of 1921, right? She is coming up for this keyword. People are finding her. And so that's why she was able to surpass those kind of numbers in her first 2 weeks. And she said, when I started this project, I didn't know how it would be received because, let's face it, talking about race in America, but then the popularity of her podcast prompted the BBC News to reach out to her, interview her, and produce 4-minute short videos where she narrated the story of the Tulsa Race Massacre. Like, how insane and wonderful and beautiful is that? So not only can you podcast about anything, like I have students, case in point, I have people talking about UX design. I have people talking about the Tulsa Race Massacre. You can talk about anything. I have people talking about ADHD. I have people talking about motherhood, being over 50, anything, okay? It's all about using the techniques and understanding how to become known for one thing. So would it be worth it to you if you were able to have those opportunities, if Podcast Moguls helps you land features in magazines? That would increase your downloads and your reach. Those features, they do increase your brand awareness. So would increasing your downloads and your reach be worth it to you? Yes, then definitely come on down. I'm ready to welcome you guys. You'll join alums like Shayla of the Black Girls Wine podcast, who was featured in Black Enterprise here on the left, and also in the Richmond Times Dispatch here on the right. Come on down. You'll really love the crew. We have a crew of amazing, amazing people, and they've all gone through the journey. Okay. They've all gone through that arc of coming in, implementing the steps, and seeing the results. So the one thing is that you have to be willing to take that first step. We talked about that in the beginning. I've been there. I've been in your shoes, not really sure what that next step was, but you have to be willing to put one foot in front of the other. So the only way to learn is through action. I could talk till I'm blue in the face. I could talk at you. I could teach. But the next step is for you to take that action. So if you're ready to take that action, come on down. And there's a pay in full bonus if you pay tonight. So you will get, if you pay in full tonight, my pitch email that landed me my first $4,000 in sponsorship. I'm sending it to you. You can use it if you want. I send those good vibes over to you as well. And then you'll also receive my 5-day branding blitz. These are the specific steps I did the 5 days leading up to launching the podcast that landed my show in the top 10 in marketing and the top 40 in business. I'm ready to hand it over. And plus, I'll also send you my pitch email to Apple. So I sent a cold email. Again, I actually started out on LinkedIn to like the head of Apple Podcasts, like talk about audacious. And that pitch and that conversation landed me in New and Noteworthy. And I'm still in touch and connected with Apple and the Apple Podcast team to this day because of this. So I'm sharing that with you as a pay in full bonus. So you have to pay in full tonight and you will get these bonuses. All right. And then one last bonus, because I love bonuses, y'all. I'm also going to share with you my pitch email that landed me my first international speaking engagement in Barbados. So you see me here, I'm speaking on a stage in Barbados. I was flown in to speak, all expenses paid, and they even flew, all expenses paid. It was just amazing rum punch. And I'm sending you the email that I sent to the organizer. Again, didn't know this person, sent a cold email, and boom, I was selected to be flued out. Okay. So come on over. You have 2 options. Option 1 is the pay in full price where you get those bonuses. So the pay in full price is $997. Option 2 is 2 payments of $550, one tonight, one in 30 days. So that price does go away on Friday, April 8th at noon at 12 p.m. Eastern. So remember that you have until the end of this class to qualify for the pay in full bonus, okay? And let me see, before we get into Q&A, just want to listen. I have so many students willing to just share their journey in Podcast Moguls. Like this is actually me only choosing a select few because there's so many, and I'm so grateful for that. So one of those students is Alicia Franklin of the Research Her podcast. She shared this inside of our private community, actually, back when she first joined Podcast Moguls a few years ago. And she said, I started podcasting in November. I had no clue what in the world I was doing, nor how to market the episodes. I just thought the people were going to show up. She said, I obsessed over the course and relaunched the podcast within a month of joining the program with so much more vision, thanks to Nikayla. And I went from hundreds of downloads to thousands. Thank you, Nikayla. You are so welcome. So again, this is another example of just 4xing, 5xing, 10xing those downloads. And this is in a matter of weeks, you guys. So, and she actually screenshot, because she's a tech, she's actually Dr. Alicia Franklin now, because she started this as she was on the PhD journey. So Dr. Franklin is a numbers person and shared her actual screenshot from her dashboard. Blowing Mama, another favorite. I mean, that name in and of itself. So she is an awesome testament to using your podcast as a platform for whatever you choose. So she wrote, this is also a screenshot from her IG story. Unprompted, she shared this testimonial. She said, Side Hustle Pro is an amazing podcast coach. As someone who's one of her Podcast Mogul students, I can truly say she helped me get Blowing Mama podcast off the ground, grow BBM's IG page. I only had 3K followers when I started her program, and through her techniques, I've grown organically to over 21,000 engaged followers. Because of Podcast Moguls, I was able to find my tribe, so important. And she even gave me helpful advice when I started the BBM clothing line too. She really knows her stuff. And if you want to really build a successful podcast, then her Podcast Mogul program is worth the investment. So she has started a successful clothing line, an offshoot of her podcast that allows her to generate income. So these are opportunities some people don't think exist, but it really does exist. So I want you to just imagine if your podcast could propel you onto stages. This is Fritz Charles of the Coin Gamma podcast. He's someone that doesn't even like the spotlight like that. He just generally loves the topic of his podcast, which is about cryptocurrency. But because he followed the program and did such a good job of sharing that content, of aligning himself with what he wants to be known for, he's been flown out to speak on international stages as well. So he's also now using the podcast as a means of generating a new income stream. So he launched the Coin Gamma Syndicate. It really is up to you what your next phase will be after launching the podcast. So imagine if you got started today, you guys. Stop imagining. Let's go ahead and do this. Here's a reminder of what you're getting inside the program. You're getting monthly live coaching sessions. You're getting lifetime community access. You're getting all of my sponsorship pitch letters and my media kit. You're getting my guest pitch templates, plus Master the Gram, plus the Goal Getter Action Plan. All right. So come on down. And one last thing, that code to get the next month, to get all of this month and the next 2 months off of Libsyn, well, the next month and a half off of Libsyn, use code Hustle Pro. All right. To host your podcast on Libsyn, use code Hustle Pro to get started for free. So now let's go ahead and get into Q&A. All right. So let me see. No, I'm going to stop sharing my screen for a little bit, you guys. Hey, all right. So here's what I'm going to do. Let me see if I can do, what's this immersive? Let's see what happens. Oh, no, never mind, y'all. I was getting too fancy there. All right. So here's what I'm going to do. I'm going to pin myself and we're going to get into Q&A. All right. Jessica says, so awesome to hear all the testimonials. Yeah, I'm so overwhelmed by they make me so proud. And all of these are unprompted. Like those are literally screenshots. That's why you see all the different font and colors. Those are literally screenshots from their IG stories. All right, so let me jump over to the Q&A. Hold on. Oh, here we go. All right, so thank you guys for your questions. Okay, so let me see if I can split this screen. Okay, cool. All right, so Sapreet says, can I transfer my money tomorrow and still get the bonus? Email hi@sidehustlepro.co, Sapreet, so we can see. I think because you're here and in good faith, I'm sure we can work together to do that. So I don't normally do that, but it sounds like you may be in somewhere where you you need to like just move funds around, which I can understand. So email us at hi@sidehustlepro.co and we'll certainly see what we can do. We do the pay in full bonus for right now. So no one's ever asked me that. So I'm responding in real time. Leslie says, my question is, I'm ready to start and ready to get moving and sign up tonight. However, I have to be out of town. And so you're saying, should I wait to sign up and join, or should I sign up and join and I can get started when you can get started when you get back home? So that's the beauty of this. This is just in time. And our first session, so our live sessions are every third Wednesday at 8 p.m. Eastern. So you have time to get back, dig into the coursework and come ready with your questions for our first session. So, and then you said, is there anything else I need to budget for, or is this subscription everything I need, except for items like microphone, backdrop, etc.? Yes, this other than budgeting for tech equipment, this subscription is everything you need. So tech equipment, and you know what, when you join, just leave space in your budget to go through the fundamentals lesson first, so you can decide what you're going to record on. So depending on if you decide to, record on your free tools, or if you decide to use a different program, that will cost a small amount, either monthly or whatever each month. But there are free tools to record, so you have options. Record and edit. Tempest says, when is this self-paced? The actual course is self-paced, actual lessons, module 1 through 8, and then we meet live. And when we meet, everyone's at different phases, right? Because again, there are people who, I don't put a cap on. Technically, your membership includes 4 live lessons. Everyone, when you join a cohort, you get 4 live lessons. However, 4 live coaching calls, excuse me. If you joined in 2018 and you want to come on down on Wednesday, you can come on down. So people will be at different levels, right? And it's all about you, staying in your lane and focusing and asking me the questions that you have, and I'm here for you. So it is self-paced, and you can come in at any point with a question that relates to where you are in the process. Jasmine, the first session is the third Wednesday in April at 8 p.m. And let me get the exact date for you. So our next live session will be April 21st at 8 p.m. Eastern, okay? Eva says, is this a live cohort class? Yes, it's a live coaching call each the third Wednesday of every month. And then inside of our community, you're able to connect as well with people, interact with people in your cohort. We kick it off. Everyone introduces themselves and we go from there. Sabrina wants to know, is your one-on-one fee of $1,000 only applicable to students of Podcast Moguls? What length of time does the fee cover? So Sabrina, I'm actually not offering one-on-ones. I was letting you know what I did charge for one-on-ones. So as you know, well, you might not know, but I am now a full-time mom, full-time podcaster, full-time everything. So one of the benefits of this program is the fact that there's so many people who want to learn from me, and I literally don't have the bandwidth to do one-on-ones anymore. So that's why I take our life coaching calls so seriously. I make time, just like I am tonight, to make sure I'm answering everyone's questions, so that you can truly, and then within the Facebook group as well, in between our calls, you're able to ask those questions. So that fee, yes, that is what I would charge for a one-on-one, and actually that might increase this year. So yeah, and that would be for an hour. As you're only available live once per month, how do students get questions answered as models are commuted? So you get questions answered when you post your questions within our private community. Kingdom Made to Women says, how do I record my podcast without rambling or being too teachy? How do you know which words are keywords? Okay, so first question, I recommend creating an outline, writing out your thoughts. You don't have to script it out. Some podcasters do that. I've done both. I have read from a script that I wrote myself, but I found that I just don't have that time like that. And that also, it just didn't feel as natural, it didn't feel as organic. Like I like my show to feel conversational. So what works for me is creating an outline. And usually when I'm doing a solo episode, I am trying to get 3 points across. So my outline is usually like, intro, bullet out some things I want to touch on in the intro, and then point one, bullet points of what I want to touch on, point two, bullet points, point three, bullet points, and then conclusion. So that's really how you keep yourself on track. And if you go over to youtube.com/side hustle pro, check out some of my solo episodes. You'll literally see me say, all right, let me look at my phone. And that's fine, to share with your audience, because you're trying to keep on track, right? So keep your outline in front of you as you go. And then as far as knowing which words to use as keywords, this goes back to what idea do you have for a show, right? What's the topic and what do you want to be known for? How specific is that topic? So business is broad, right? But talking about fire, that particular lane of business, which everyone who's into fire, what is it? Something retire early. It's escaping financial independence, retire early. Everyone who's into that movement automatically recognizes that acronym. And so they gravitate to that part of finance, right? Or people who are interested in trading gravitate to that. So when you're thinking about your topic, make sure that you're getting specific, and then your keywords are going to be related to that specific thing that you're talking about. So for example, with me, my keywords would be things like side hustling, Black women entrepreneurs, Black women owned businesses, entrepreneurship, side hustling. And so share with us what your topic is, and then we can talk through keywords in a little bit more specific terms. But I hope that was helpful and you understand what I mean by keywords. So Eva said, how is SEO done on a podcast? Exactly by doing exactly what I just touched on with Kingdom Made, right? So you are going to make sure that if you have an episode, first of all, let's rewind even to creating the podcast. If you're starting a podcast, make the name or the subtitle, because sometimes you want to create a name and you don't want it to be too long, right? But make sure that subtitle, make sure that something indicates to your audience what your show is about. And then in your podcast description, make sure you get specific about what your show is about. You can check out my podcast description on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, SoundCloud, wherever you see my podcast, you'll see that description of what it is about. It's very specific, and it includes my keyword search terms. And so that is how you optimize for SEO. So when you're searching Google, sometimes depending on what the people are searching for, my episodes will pop up. I try as often as possible, if it's a famous name or something that people will be searching for, whether it's the business name or the guest name, I try to include that in the episode title, because that definitely shows up in Google searches when people are searching for that particular person. So these are ways that you optimize for search engine optimization on a podcast. And remember, we didn't get to touch on this too much, but everyone who joins Podcast Moguls, I advise you to start to create a website for your podcast. So that is also how you are able to capitalize on SEO, because you're literally putting up show notes and you're putting up content so that search engines can crawl your website and pull out those keywords and rank you for SEO. Dion says, is it better to do video podcast episodes, or is audio still okay? What is the best mic that you recommend? So Dion, I know that nowadays it seems everyone's doing video, right? And it can feel like you need to do both. Let me remind everyone that I didn't start doing video until last year. That was my 5th year of podcasting. And podcasting has been around, I actually just realized how long it's been around this past last week when I was at the Podcast Hall of Fame ceremony. Since 2004, people have been doing stuff since 2004, all right? And some people have been doing audio, some people have been doing video, and whatever lane you're in, it works for you, because as long as you are consistent and create quality content in that lane, that's all that matters. I recommend starting with audio, because video is a whole nother layer, and you don't need to stress yourself about that until you get really comfortable and you get really into a good system and rhythm with your audio content before you start layering in being camera ready. And then as far as the mic that I recommend, so inside of the program, I share actual links to 3 different mics. So a low, medium, and high price mic. And I, for a long time, I use the Blue Yeti for my podcast, and I really like that one. But you can start with something inexpensive, more inexpensive, like the ATR 2100, I believe it is. Saying it off the top of my head, but again, it's linked inside the fundamentals lesson. So that one, I believe, should be under $50, and it does the job. And that's what you want to do. You just want clean audio. There's actually a lot you need to do around where you record that will help your audio be a little bit better. So making sure you're in a quiet room, and a smaller space, a place with furniture, so there are no echoes and things like that. Closing all windows will also matter just as much as the microphone. Lizette says, do you have to create a blog? No, I started with a blog and realized that, it wasn't for me. So you don't have to do that. You said, I'm new to listening to podcasts. Where do I go to research my podcast idea? So Lizette, so when you're going to research your podcast idea, you can start as simple as with Google. Just Google the thing that you have, the topic you have for an idea. And then you can Google that topic with the word podcast and see what comes up. Then you can also open up the podcast app, whether it's Apple Podcast app on your phone or the Spotify app on Android or on the website, desktop. Open all of that up and then search again for your podcast topic idea to see what comes up. So that's how you begin to do your research, to see what's out there, to see who else is talking about this, and then listen to that content to determine what is missing from those conversations. You also said, are podcasts popular in Latin America? I am fluent in English and Spanish. I am Puerto Rican. I'm considering doing a podcast in both languages. So first of all, that is absolutely something that, so the podcast app, their podcast apps across not every, but many countries. So what will happen there is, you will have listeners you'll have listeners inside of the US podcast app store. You'll have listeners across different Latin American countries. But as long as your podcast is available across these platforms, then yes, you can have listeners across these different countries. I have listeners in the UK and Jamaica, and it's in South Africa, and it's so cool to me because I'm like, how did you hear about the show? So good content is global. And then there's a podcast that you should check out too if you're interested in multilingual podcast called Radio Ambulante. I actually worked on this podcast when I was at NPR. So just as a, to research their story, AKA Google them and read up on the articles of how they came to be, how they try to infuse the different languages and reach multi-audiences within those languages. T says, if you put a face on the podcast, do you suggest happy or is serious faces okay? This is all, so this is one of those things where you're actually taking a few steps ahead. So I want you to go backwards to focusing on what's your podcast topic? Is it specific enough? Does it necessitate a happy versus serious face? Like, I think that you're getting a little bit ahead because that actually has much less to do with making sure your audience knows what your show is about. So I would love to know if you're comfortable sharing what your topic is, and do you feel that is specific enough? We could talk a little bit more about that. You also asked, do you have PR? Do you have a team to start? Did you have a team to start? How many titles? Okay. No, I don't have a publicist. back in the day, I did a short campaign with a publicist around the 1-year anniversary mark of Side Hustle Pro. And, it was like a one-off campaign. There was a company that existed at the time where you could do a one-off PR campaign. But prior to that, I did not do anything. Did I have a team to start? No, I started as a one-man show, one-woman show. I did my recording, my editing, my social media all by myself. About 7-ish months into podcasting, I was approached by my editor/producer, and we've been working together ever since. He sent me a cold pitch, and we did some test runs, and that's how we started working together. That was my first the first member of my team. All of my team is contractors. So the titles are less important, but again, I have a producer, editor, a virtual assistant, and a social media manager. All right. EB says, is it true to target your audience by location and genre? EB, can you elaborate on a little bit more on what you're trying to target them for? Are you trying to target them for ads? Let me know. Joanne wants to know, how long did it take you, or when did you discover your secret sauce? So, Joanne, it took me, so I started my blog in summer 2015, and I would say it took me about 6 months, or 4 to 6 months or so to realize that I was being drawn to these stories. And then it took me a year. So it took me until June 2016 to launch my podcast and to truly own that, hey, I was going to be talking about things that I wasn't comfortable with at first. And I was going to have to share the real me and to share my wins and my losses. And, so it took me about a year of that process. So thank you for asking that. Cassandra says, did you survey your potential listeners or get topic ideas for episodes? So it's funny you should ask this, because this is a part of the perfect listener exercise that I teach. So what I did do was interviews with my prospective listeners to get to know them and to get a sense of, what they felt was missing from the conversation, what they would want to hear more about. And I don't think I got a specific episode idea per se in those interviews. Later on, I did, when people would text me on the side or say, hey, how do you do this, or blah, blah, blah. And I did some of my solos on some of those things. But in the beginning, I absolutely recommend getting on the phone with your prospective listener and doing those interviews, doing what I call the perfect listener calls. And they will be so informative as far as how to structure your show and what type of episodes to do. Jen says, what if you kind of know nothing about Instagram? That's what I'm here to teach you, Jen. That you're in the right place. You don't have to know anything about Instagram. And again, if Instagram is not your jam, you can apply these tips, again, with tweaks to whichever social media platform is your thing. You will have to use a social media platform in this course. You will have to promote your podcast. Having a podcast and not promoting it on social media is kind of like having a restaurant and cooking all the food, but not telling anybody about it, not selling it to anyone. You can't hoard your content. So you will get comfortable with these platforms, especially when you start to find your target audience and you just focus on them. That's all that matters. Not all these bells and whistles. All that matters is that you're serving your perfect listener. Moose wants to know, when you say focus on one thing, what do you mean by that? Is this for the whole show, or is that everyday different topics? So that is okay, Moose. So what I mean by focusing on one thing is, so if you are someone who's multi-passionate, which most of us are, if you're someone who feels like you have expertise in different things, you are going to have to pick a lane. It doesn't mean you're putting yourself in a box or you're not embracing the fullness and wholeness of what you bring to the table. What this does is just helps people to understand the first layer of expertise that you want to be contacted and that you want to teach and be connected with others about. I'm someone who I really love marketing and social media marketing. I also really love talking about entrepreneurship itself. And I like talking about podcasting, and I like talking about side hustling, right? So if I try to make the podcast every single thing I was interested in, I would confuse people. So picking one thing, what I mean by being known for one thing means you have to get decisive, and you have to understand that when you pick a subject, especially if you're truly picking something that you're interested in, there's so many layers of that subject to unpack. So you will have the opportunity to show off your expertise in other things. But again, you just have to make it clear to people what the show is about. Think about when it's time for someone to share your show, what do you want them to say? Do you want them to say, hey, I listened to this episode. The podcast is kind of random, but this particular episode was good. Like, no, that's not what you want them to say. You want them to say, hey, I listened to this episode. Like, this is this awesome podcast about Black women side hustlers who scale from passion projects to profitable business. This episode is with the founder of the Lip Bar. I didn't know she was on Shark Tank and got rejected. Like, you want them to not only share the episode, but the overall show. I could go on and on, so I'm going to pause myself there, but let me know if you have other questions about that. Naima says, how do you step up your social media game? So one of the things that I focus on is to focus on doing smaller bursts of time to keep your consistency game up. So literally setting a timer, opening up the app for 10 minutes. When that timer is done, getting off the app, go in there. And I've heard this before, post and ghost, right? Go in there, post your content, engage with some of your listeners, whether that's by doing a little bit of OMG, checking some DMs, responding back to people, going into your comments to make sure if anyone wrote to you, you write them back. And you go in with such a laser focus. I know 10 minutes sounds short, but you can actually get all of that accomplished in 10 minutes. So stepping up your game means taking the labor and the dread out of it and going in there with laser focus to just go in, do your business, because this is a job, right? Like, okay, it's my job. I'm going in there, I'm going to do my work, and then I'm going to leave. Lo says, how do you figure out what content your ideal person in the O of OMG likes or what works for them? So the O in OMG means that you first need to just observe. You observe and you make note and you look at the stats of the different content and you see, okay, like these seem to perform really well. What is it about these? Let me continue to observe and see what are some of the common threads. Is there text on the video? Is there text on the photo? Is the caption broken down in a way where you can really quickly read it and get the gist of what they're saying? Are they doing multiple slides where they're teaching something, and breaking down each step into, some people call it, a gallery post. Some people just call it multi-image post, whatever you call it, right? When you post like up to 10 images on Instagram. So that's how you figure out what content your ideal person likes. First of all, you identify who your ideal person is, you identify what they're interested in and who they're following, and then you identify topics that they're interested in, and you go to all of these places, whether it's the people they're following or the hashtags they're following, and you pay attention to the content in these places and how the content is performing. How do I find what they consume on IG? Same thing I just said. And are you asking them specifically? No, not necessarily. You're observing. The O in OMG is auditing, obsessively auditing. So that means observing. Where do we find the data in OMG? When you create a business or create an Instagram account, there's an insights tab. You click on that and you can see the data, which will show you how the content performed. It will show you insights on your audience, where they're located, what time they're active, and all of that. And the M in OMG is make friends, okay? Shantae says, what tools do you use to create unique branding for your IG content? So in the beginning, I used to use an app called WordSwag. I now use Canva. And now, again, this is 5 years in. Well, 3 years in, I got my website redesigned by Shirley T Design. And so we continue to work together, and she now designs my graphics. But if you scroll all the way back, you can see all the different iterations of Side Hustle Pro graphics, and all of those prior to 2019, I created myself. Actually, the graphics from Shirley just started this year. So prior to this year, even those were just Canva designs. Canva, by the way, Canva. you said, is it better to start with a podcast photo that's a real image or a graphic? So you guys, as far as design, that's like the last thing. That's the last thing you need to think about. So maybe you're there. Maybe you're at that process now where you have your idea, you've recorded your episodes and all of that, but the actual design of your tile is the last thing you want to think about. And I go over that in the positioning your podcast, the launch your podcast, road to launch content, because there are a couple of different strategies that you can employ, and it really all is up to you. So you can do, you can do a photo, you can do vibrant, you can do something that's more like theoretical, and you can do something that's more straightforward. So you have a few different options, but I'm always team straightforward, because that gets you right to the top of the SEO fastest. So Shantae says, how long did it take to land the first podcast sponsorship? So I started pitching 6 months into podcasting, and I landed my first sponsorship with my first pitch. So at the 6-month mark. You missed getting a screenshot of the 3 steps for creating a portfolio website. So I will be sending out this replay if you want to you want to take a screenshot again, but it's just having your bio and having your photo, your headshots, your bio, website, so people can connect with you. Sakina says, after this April cohort, when is the next cohort? I do not know. I actually take it day by day, Sakina. And like I said, the last one was in December. So it really all depends on how things are going, because I truly devote myself to getting everyone up and running, and I don't want anyone to feel rushed. Sabrina says, can you please review the bonuses available with a full payment? Hold on one second. Let me actually, what I'm going to do really quick. Can I share this? Hold on, guys. So for the bonuses with paying in full, you're going to get, sorry, I'm going backwards and seeing if I could share my screen, but it got a little complex. So you're getting my pitch email that landed me my first 4,000 in sponsorship. You're getting my 5-day branding blitz, which is essentially the steps I took in the 5 days leading up to launching Side Hustle Pro that landed me in the charts. Then you're getting my pitch email to Apple that got me featured in New and Noteworthy. And then you're getting my pitch email that landed me my first international speaking engagement in Barbados. So that is all within the pay in full bonus. Andrea says, do you teach about show notes and descriptions? So I have not yet, but I'm open to adding that if you let me know what questions you have. And this is one of those things too that you can bring to our live coaching calls. If enough people have questions about that, I can absolutely create an additional resource inside of our course platform and just add in tips for show notes. So the thing about show notes is I treat show notes kind of like a mini blog post, and I want to put all the information there. So again, you are finding Side Hustle Pro and you're finding the podcast through the show notes being optimized for SEO. So I'm repeating the title, I'm repeating that summary of the episode, which includes the guest name, their business name. I'm linking to their websites, I'm linking to their Instagrams, and it's like a mini blog post. Do you discuss embedding ads, breaks, etc.? So I have not so far, but I'm happy to answer questions about that. So are you talking about embedding versus dynamic advertising? Let me know. We can certainly talk about that. And that is something too that when you're getting ready to choose a podcast host, definitely look into if the host provides dynamic advertising. So as an independent podcaster, AKA a podcaster who's not on a network, you can be in the future, but when you're first starting out, right, you're not on a network, things like dynamic advertising require a lot more back-end work on your part. So that's just something to keep in mind. Callie says, will you go over editing or hiring an editor or producer for quality audio? Yes, we have an editing module. And as far as hiring an editor, we do have some suggestions in the Facebook group. These suggestions, sometimes people know, we have to see how up to date those particular suggestions are, but people, as they're using new editors, are always adding in their suggestions. Elle says, I paid for the packet that cost $27. I entered the wrong email. Sure, shoot us an email at hi@sidehustlepro.co, not com, .co. All right, Elle, and then we can take care of that for you. Jen says, can you describe in a little more detail how you connect? What did you do besides follow the person? Oh, so you're referring to the make new friends. So when I say connect, I literally, it starts with a follow. What usually happens when you're doing this correctly is that person will come over to your account and they may like a post, they may comment on the post, they may not do it right away, but I allow the relationship to grow organically from there. I do not do one of those automated messages that some people do where they're like, thanks for following me. I don't like those. I don't think anyone likes those. So I don't do that. But I engage with the people who follow me. And this was a little bit easier when I had more time. But now that you're following these people, you theoretically should see them sometimes in your feed. So I like their posts. I comment. I let them know that I'm here. I'm not just a robot who's following for following. So that's how I start that relationship. Again, I just treat it like networking. I'm getting to know this person. And then you said, what's in the offer that was presented when signing up for this meeting? So that offer is just straightforward learning how to record, edit, get set up all on your own. So if you don't want any additional live coaching, you don't want any additional resources, it does not include things outside of technical podcasting, things such as my pitch templates or my sponsorship templates. It does not include any marketing guidance or anything like that. That's just a straightforward technical, get your podcast up today if that's what you would like to do and that's what you were looking for, in addition to tonight's class on making it your side hustle. Thanks for all the questions, you guys. Okay, we have about 10 or so more, so let's try to get through these. All right. Tangula says, what info will you give to a person that doesn't talk much? So first of all, when you are reaching out to guests, really try to do as much due diligence as you can to see how this person is, whether it's on social media or on other podcasts that they've been on, or anybody you reach out to. Try not to reach out to someone who's never done anything at all ever, because people need media training. They need practice, and you don't want your show to be practice. Okay, it's already an independent podcast. You don't want your show to sound like just novice. So go on ahead and make sure that you're reaching out to people who've been interviewed before, and then listen to those and see how they do, to see if you like their personality and if they do well on audio, and go from there. That's one of the tricks to making sure that you're not interviewing someone who's just not good at being interviewed. Melinda says, how would an introvert host a podcast as a CPR instructor? Well, you're speaking to an introvert. And one of the things I like about podcasting is I don't have to be around anybody. I could just, especially when I wasn't doing video, I could interview people in my pajamas if I wanted to. I didn't have to turn my camera on. It was just straightforward. I'm passionate about this topic. I want to help people through this podcast, and I focused on that. And because it's such an intimate platform as well, it allows me and the guest, or me by myself, if I'm just doing a solo episode, to not be around a crowd, not feel my usual introversion, because I get to extend my energy when I want to. I choose my recording schedule. I choose how and when I podcast. So that helps you to manage your energy as well. Hold on 1 second. All righty. Amanda says, what is a download and why is it important? So a download is, so some people refer to this as listens, but okay. When you have a podcast, when people listen to your episode, can either be streamed or they can click and it can actually be downloaded to their device so they can listen to it offline. All of those count as downloads. So when you go into seeing statistics for your show and you see how many people listen to your episode, you'll see a stat called downloads. So that's the premier stat and key performance indicator that is used in podcasting to measure how well your show is doing and how big your audience is. For now, that could always change. And download is the same across Apple and Spotify. When you have a podcast host, for example, Libsyn creates a feed, what's called a feed. It distributes it to all these different players, Apple, Spotify, YouTube, everything, right? And so that way it's able to tell you how many people downloaded it across these platforms. And so you're able to see all your downloads in your podcast host platform. Cool. All right. April says, what if you don't have a degree or experience to talk about something? Oh, you don't need a degree. What you need is passion and determination and a true interest in this. People, take for granted how much having a genuine interest in something will help you and take you far. Because if you're interested in it, your audience will hear this. I certainly want to listen to someone who thinks this is like the most interesting thing ever, because it will show and you will hear it in the questions that they ask. You'll hear it in their voice as they're relaying their experience or talking about things that they're learning. And that is what causes people to be engaged. So you do not need a degree. You certainly don't want to spread false information. So if you're doing something technical like science, then maybe, let's touch base offline and talk about, like, are you the best person for that? What you can do instead is bring on actual experts in a topic, which is what I've done with Side Hustle Pro. I'm a sponge. I just want to learn. Let me be the conduit by starting a podcast where I interview people who are further ahead on this entrepreneur process, and let's have them teach me while also teaching people who are listening. So people get to listen to me ask all the dumb questions and say, hey, I don't get that. Can you explain that? And people appreciate that because they don't have to ask that. You just did. Rachel says, should your website for the podcast be separate from an existing website that you have for a side hustle? Yes, unless it has the same name and you plan to just make it an extension of the side hustle. But 9 times out of 10, when people are starting their podcast, so what happens is sometimes, and I don't know if you're doing this, but they want to use the podcast to promote their business, what they're already doing. So they're like, let me just start a podcast. And no one wants to listen to, the XYZ Inc. podcast. No one's like, oh, let me go listen to a bunch of marketing and sales messages about this business because they want to sell stuff to me. Like, no, they want to listen to a topic. They want to listen to a conversation. So if it so happens that you can teach someone something and say, this is brought to you by my business, that is helpful. So you'll sometimes, a lot of companies are bringing this to you now. They'll bring like a LinkedIn or a HubSpot. They'll bring you content that is related to what their website is about, like professional career advice podcasts. So you tune in for the conversations. You tune in to hear from people. However, you don't tune in to get a sales message about that business. So that's why you need to separate the two. And for your podcast website, it does not have to be exhaustive. Again, go to KaylaKSpeaks.com to see the simple, basic template I put up just to get the main information across, the main portfolio ingredients, okay? My photo, my bio, headshots, all of that. You also said, what software process would you recommend for recording episodes with guests virtually in different cities? I recommend riverside.fm. Go to sidehustlepro.co/riverside to use my promo code. But that's what I record my episodes on now. And if you want to see how that looks, just head over to my YouTube, my Side Hustle Pro YouTube channel, and you'll see how it looks when I record via Riverside. And keep in mind, I use an external webcam. So you're seeing the footage from the webcam, not my laptop camera. You said, thanks so much for all the info. You're so welcome. Is there a link to buy the technical guide? if you go back to podcastmoguls.com and go through the registration again, you'll see the link. I'm so sorry, I don't have a direct link at the moment. I'll change that. Or you can also email me and I'll send you the link. Erica, email hi@sidehustlepro.co. All right. Erica says, is it best to have a separate IG for the podcast? Yes. How do you decide on length of seasons? It's completely up to you and what your audience prefers. So getting to know your audience is very helpful, you guys, with deciding how long your show should be, how many episodes. And with something like seasons, it's more important to just make sure your audience is aware. Just make sure your audience is aware, because taking a break, you will see a download drop. So you just have to keep your audience informed. And then while you're on break, play repeats, just like a regular TV show. Play some reruns. Mercedes says, what if the hashtag you use isn't very popular? You can use more than one hashtag, Mercedes. So there's definitely more than one hashtag that's relevant to your perfect listener. Megan says, what should be in your portfolio? Is there a list of the podcasters you mentioned during the presentation? All right, so let's go back and look at portfolio, because a few of you guys have asked about this. Let me see. What's the best way to share my screen again? All right, so the portfolio, quick website, bio, headshots. All right, quick website, bio, and headshots. The list of I don't know. Oh, is there a list of the podcasters I mentioned? Yes. So number one, you can head over to, let me make sure this link is active. I believe, hold on, I'm just checking one thing. So they should be active at podcastmoguls.com/testimonials. You can see some of the podcasters I mentioned and more, some others that you haven't seen as well, are on that site. Okay, Caitlin says, I have IG, Twitter, and my podcasts are posted wherever you find podcasts. I just feel like my grandma and friends are my only listeners. What do I do? Are there any podcast conferences you recommend going to virtually or in person? So Caitlin, if you feel like your grandma and your friends are the only one listening, that tells me that we have some work to do with identifying your perfect listener and identifying where they are online and how they need to see your content. So it's not enough just to post, hey, new episode, or to post about your episode, because if you're posting it in a way that it's posted in a way that's not in the format that they receive it best, based on the format that's doing the best for that audience, then they're not going to engage with that content. So, for example, if I like really aesthetic visual posts, or, maybe I'm into reels with music and your posts are text heavy graphics that, have like a bunch of podcast logos on it. I'm not saying that it does, but let's pretend. Then even if they were following you, they're going to scroll right past. And then your posts are going to be shown less and less in their feed, because Instagram thinks they don't engage with it and they don't want to see it. So we have to do some work on making sure that you've truly identified your perfect listener, you know where they are online, and you're creating content that will resonate with them, that will catch their eye and make them tune in. And then as far as podcast conferences, check out podcastmovement.com. That's one of the premier podcast conferences, the first one I ever went to. I learned a ton there, including some more tips for monetizing and pitching that I implemented. The culture says, what is one supposed to post on Instagram exactly? It doesn't allow you to post audiograms. Yes, it does. You can post audiograms on Instagram. As far as links, you said it doesn't let you post links sometimes. So what do you post to promote your episodes? So check out Side Hustle Pro on Instagram, the culture. So you will see some of the ways that I promote my episodes. So you can post audiograms, you can post video clips. If you do video, you can post a static image with a summary, and then you can have a link in your bio that once you click on it, has multiple items that people can check out. They can check out the latest episode, they can check out your website. So definitely go over to Side Hustle Pro on Instagram for some examples of this. Mondre says, how do you format a podcast template script and make it flow to be conversational yet educational for listeners? So a good way to do this is, if a script really helps you, one, you can use, there's some teleprompter apps now. So you can actually type into the teleprompter and then have it where you're able to look into the teleprompter as you're recording. So to get like the one that's for desktop or laptop, that's a little more pricey, but there are apps out there that can help you. And then as far as the scripting, what you can do is go into Google Docs, select the microphone, and then talk into the document. So then, of course, it's going to have typos. So go in there and fix it up. But for it to sound conversational, you actually have to type like you would speak. So if it's easier, start by recording what you want to say, and then, go in there and tweak it a little bit, fix the typos, but that will start to give you a good feel for how to create your script. Make it an audio script to begin with. Katia says, I just started a podcast hosted by Anchor. Congrats. Will it be difficult to move it to the host you're recommending? It will involve some administrative work, but it is doable. A lot of people have done so inside of Podcast Moguls. Leslie says, how much should I budget for tech equipment? So Leslie, that's a little tricky to answer because it's really going to depend on what you want to start with and where you want to record. So let's say, you already have a laptop. So you're going to budget anywhere from $40 to $100 for your mic, depending on where you want to start. And then if you want to record on something like a Riverside, you're going to budget anywhere from $15 to $19 a month for that platform. But you can also record for free using GarageBand if you have Mac, for example. So it really going to depend, but I would definitely set aside a couple of hundred just to be safe. Genesis says, I have a podcast called That Millennial. I struggle with consistency and I hate the post-production process. How do you stay consistent? So that's one of the reasons why I include the Goal Getter Action Plan, because setting out your intentions, but also writing it down and breaking it up into a process where, okay, I was able to do things that I hate by giving it one day a week. Like, okay, editing Tuesdays. I only have to think about editing on Tuesdays. It sucks, but I'm not going to try to break up editing. I'm going to do editing on Tuesdays. Social media, it can be a pain. I'm going to focus on creating batch content on Wednesdays, and so forth and so forth. And then I also break down my goals for the month. So, I will say for the next quarter, right? So April, May, June, I have a overarching goal for that month. And then for each week, I have a sub goal of a task that I need to do in order to achieve that overarching goal for the month. And so that's how I stay consistent, always working towards that guiding light goal, because when you treat your quarters like that, what happens is you end up accomplishing way more in the year, because usually we set out a bulk list of goals for the whole year. And then by the time you look up, it's June and you've only accomplished one or two. By really assigning it to a month, it can feel like, oh man, how can I only focus on this? But if you don't assign it to a month, it's not going to happen, period. So assign it to a month, and then that way it's actually going to get done. Kristen says, what do you feel is the sweet spot as far as episode time for a podcast? There is no sweet spot. So your sweet spot, there's no sweet spot, but there's a time frame that works for your audience. So they're podcasters who, if they make a podcast that's less than 2 hours, their audience will be mad. Check out the Read podcast, check out the Tim Ferriss podcast. Like, their audience feels cheated if they don't get a long podcast. But then there are other podcasts like the New York Times, The Daily, or, NPR Up First. I helped to launch that one. Like, that is meant to be a 20-minute or less show, snackable, break down the news for you in a easy to digest, quick commute kind of way. So because they set that out with that listener in mind, and because people who have that attention span now gravitate to that show, they just have to worry about focusing on that listener. So that's how you understand the sweet spot. You understand your listener first and foremost. JS says, I'm on IG and unable to solidify my target audience. Do you think podcasting is an easier arena to find your target audience? So when you say you're on IG, so it sounds like you're saying you started on IG, maybe you're trying to do content on IG and you've had trouble finding your perfect audience, your target audience, and you're wondering if maybe podcasting will help you. So you start, what the key here is to think through what it is that you want to create, what kind of content you want to create, what's your idea, and then think through who is the person. Again, we're going to narrow it down to a person. That person's going to have a name. My person is Janelle. You're going to know as much about them as possible. And then when you create your content, create for that person in mind. It doesn't mean you won't have byproduct people who will listen to your show, but because it is targeted and they know what it's about, it helps your show to be shared. It helps people understand. So therefore, it helps more people to follow you back on Instagram. So it sounds like to me that your show, your content right now is very broad, and you're thinking, if you start a podcast, that might solve the problem. But take a few steps back first and start with the idea, then the audience, and then the platform. Monique says, what advice if you want to do a group podcast? So for group podcasts, think about where you are in life, where everyone else in the group isn't in life, and where you guys might be in 5 years. And if this is something you guys can commit to doing, as you guys go through different life cycles and shifts and things like that. Anytime you do something with a partner, partnerships are like marriages, okay? Do you want to be married to these people? I'm assuming you don't just want to get a podcast for a year, right? If you want to start podcasting, like do it with like real longevity in mind. That's when you see the growth, like 6 years in, right? I'm starting to see new areas and new levels unlocked for me, like the Podcast Hall of Fame. So 6 years from now, do you want to be in the same group? So do that assessment for yourself. I can tell you it's very, very difficult. I would do, honestly, no more than 1 or 2 co-hosts. Like a group is very, very difficult to stay with. And that's all I'll say about that. Jasmine says, should we incorporate or LLC register podcast as a business? Only after you've done the podcast for a while, because names are subject to change, as you've seen in tonight's class. And also, you might find that you don't want to talk about that topic anymore. So focus first on the content. Focus on the business aspect not last, but later. So 6 months into podcasting, I realized I do enjoy this. I want to stick with this. I want to start earning income from this. So that's when I incorporated. That's when I looked into trademarking. That's when I opened up my business bank account and all of that jazz. 6 months in. Your timeline might be longer or shorter, depending on your topic or how long you've been thinking about this. So go forth with that. And then last question of the night, you guys, and then we're going to wrap up for tonight. Thank you so much for joining, and to everyone who's still in the building. Sabrina says, what are your thoughts about SoundCloud as a podcast host? Would you recommend migrating over to Libsyn? Yes, I would absolutely recommend migrating over to Libsyn. SoundCloud, it was built first and foremost as a platform for musicians. It's not really optimized for podcasting, unfortunately. So I would not recommend that. I would recommend starting with a platform host that is optimized for podcasters, so you get the most accurate statistics. What you can do, if you Google Apple Podcast partners, you see other options for hosts. So if you don't like Libsyn, you have things like Blueberry and things of that nature, who are premier certified partners for Apple Podcasts, because Apple Podcasts is the biggest #1 app for podcasts. So you want an app that you want a host that works really seamlessly and that it has the stamp of approval from Apple. All right. So that was the last question, you guys. I don't think I see Joanna typing anymore. If I missed your question, because it is 9, thank you for staying 2 hours with us. I don't want Zoom to cut us off. So if you have any additional questions, feel free to hit me up at hi@sidehustlepro.co. I will be sharing this replay. And welcome to everyone who joined tonight. Sorry, Let me see if I can shout out a few names. If I get cut off, you guys, just charge it to Zoom and not to my heart. Okay. I want to see if I can shout out some folks who joined tonight. I might just be able to see your emails and not your thing, but yeah, shout out. Yeah, I can't see everybody tonight, but if you have any issues whatsoever, you guys, email me at hi@sidehustlepro.co. Thank you for coming. Thank you, Joanna. Shout out to my husband in the building, and I will talk to you guys later. All right. Take care.